Hey, this is Stephanie Bourbon, and I'm super excited that you're back. And I know that normally I talk about romantic comedies, at least I've been doing it lately, but I have to talk to you guys about Squid Game. Oh my God. Stay tuned. Warning you now, there are going to be some spoilers because I'm going to do a craft talk about Squid Game and why it works so brilliantly and why we're so addicted to it. So if you haven't watched it, please do not watch this video until you have, and then save this video and come back and watch it because I am going to give you some spoilers. Okay, let's go. Oh my God. Okay, so Squid Game. This is, if you don't know what it is and you have no intention on watching it, then proceed with this video. As I said in the little intro, there are going to be spoilers because I'm going to talk about the craft of Squid Game. But I will tell you guys this. We watched the series. We finished it on Monday night and we started on Sunday. So we went through all 9 episodes and I had 3 vivid nightmares on Sunday night and on Monday night and yesterday, on Tuesday and yesterday. I cannot stop thinking about this show. It is so well done. It's unbelievable. Okay. There are very specific reasons why Squid Game works so well. And I've seen quite a few posts where people are like, oh, it's just because people are sick, and sick like not ailing from something, but like sick in the head that they want to watch something like this. This is not it. I will tell you this right now. The main character is likable from the second he is on screen. This is a character, now I'm going to say I am not even going to attempt to pronounce the Korean names because I will botch them and I don't want to be offensive to anybody or confuse anybody because I'm really, really bad. I don't speak Korean and I'm not even going to pretend to. You will know the main character is super, super likable. We meet him at the beginning. We know that he has money troubles. We also learn early on through showing, not telling, showing that he is very broke, desperate, and he gambles. And he's a little bit selfish. He's there, he's clearly living with his mom. He's a grown man and she's doing all the work. It's not even that, it's that he goes and steals money from her, and then you see him betting at races, okay? And he wins money, and he's super excited. He calls up his daughter. He's going to take her to an extra special dinner, and then he gets pickpocketed by another character who comes back, and the storytelling is so brilliant there. So there's a pickpocket who pickpockets him, and she ends up in the story. So that he's very desperate. He has lost all his money. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He feels like a crap dad. His ex-wife is married to a rich guy, and we find out when he's actually having a very cheap meal with his 8-year-old daughter. She doesn't care. She's happy to be with him. We learn that he has a low opinion of himself, and it's all based on money. His wife's new husband or his daughter's stepfather has taken them out to like this fancy steak dinner. She doesn't care about it, but it makes him feel worthless. Some thugs threaten to kill him because he owes them, I think it's the equivalent of like $250,000. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but it's a lot of money that he has no way to get. Now, from everything we've learned at the beginning, he's not well educated. He has a severe gambling problem. He's divorced. He's living with his mother. And this is a man in at least his 30s at this point. He might be older than that. It's a great opening to make you care about a character. And then there's a scene where he meets a guy at the train station, the subway station. The man knows who he is. He knows everything about him. And he offers him, it's 100,000, the Korean, it's 100,000 won. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's basically, it's a lot of money even translated to US dollars. I think it's like 2,000 or 3,000, but he's piss broke. Keep in mind, he's so broke. He didn't even eat dinner when he took his daughter to this super cheap meal. That's how broke he is. He has to like hit this card and flip it over. And if he doesn't do it, he gets hit in the face, so physical pain. And if he does do it, he gets the money. Well, he doesn't do it so many times that he ends up, I guess it's this side of his face, ends up kind of like super red and almost bleeding from all the slapping, but he's won all this money and he's super excited. The guy gives him his business card and he says, that you can come and play 6 games, and if you win all 6, you will get, you know, all this money. I think it was like 46 million or 46 billion of the Korean exchange, whatever that is called. So that's all he says to him, and he gives him the business card. And the main character's like, what do you think, I'm a fool? And he goes home. He decides to call and enter this game. Now, this is where the spoilers start, okay? Episode 1, there are 456 people who have agreed to do these 6 games. They do not explain that if you don't win the games, you're killed. They do say elimination, but they don't say kill. It is beyond terrifying. And I will commend the director and set designer and cinematographer and the editing and everything for the way it's shot. The music is great. Everything about this is unbelievable, and you get sucked in. But that first episode was so terrifying. I really didn't want to watch more, but I already cared so much about the main character that I did. So when they all get there, they are all dressed exactly the same, and they have numbers, which reminded me of like scenes from Schindler's List, even though this is not a Holocaust thing. It's more of a battle royale. The Hunger Games, it's like that, but it's not dystopian. You will see it described as dystopian. It's not dystopian because it does not take place in a world that's after some like nuclear war or sun flare or some catastrophe that has changed our world. It's set in today. It's set in everyday world. But when they agree to play the game, they get picked up, they get immediately drugged, and while they're unconscious, they strip them of all their clothes and they give them these new clothes, and they assign everybody a number, and you learn later that they put like, it's either this year or this year, they put like a chip in there, so when they scan them, they know exactly who they are. It's absolutely beyond terrifying. They wake up and they're told that they have to play these games, and they go outside, what looks like outside, to a field, and they're going to play red light, green light. All the games are based on children's games in Korea. Some of them we also have here in America, and some of them we don't. Very beginning, he explains what the SQUID game is, which doesn't happen until the last game. It's the 6th game, which, if you know anything about storytelling, that to me was pretty obvious that we're gonna play the SQUID game at the end. But the first one is red light, green light. And what happens is they play music and then you stop. This is a game that most of us played as a child. Maybe not in this day and age, but when I was a child, we played it. People play it. When they say green light, you go. When they say red light, you have to stop and freeze. Well, in this, there's this super creepy doll that one of my Korean friends from animation posted on Facebook the other day, explaining that it's based on a Korean children's book. But it's creepy, and it's huge, and it's got these eyes that are like motion detectors, and what it does is it scans, and if you move at all, like even, you know, like this, like trying to catch your balance, you are immediately shot. There's like these guns that come out from the building, and they shoot everybody, and that everybody starts to panic, and they're running for the doors, and there's mass chaos, and people are being shot. But here's the catch. If you don't get across the finish line and there's only 5 minutes, you will also get killed. So it's terrifying beyond belief. Before they started playing the game, they signed a thing. There are 3 rules. You must play, you can't quit, and the only way to stop the game is if the majority of the players want to stop, okay? After this, they decide, they take a vote, and it is literally 50-50. And this old man is the deciding vote, and he's like 95 years old, and he has a tumor, and he's one of the main characters too, and he decides, forget it, it's crazy, let's all go home. So they all get taken back to their real lives, because they're all, you know, half of them really want the money because their lives are so bad, but the other half realize that, oh my God, we could die doing this, this is insane. Nowhere do they ever tell them that this is gonna go down to one person. All they tell them is if you win the games, you get to live, okay? So they go back in the real world, and you realize how bad everything is for everybody. He realizes that his mother needs this operation for diabetes when he goes back, because when he comes home, she's not there. And that's what makes him decide to go back. They tell everybody, you can go home now, we're gonna give you another chance to come back. Most of the people come back. I think it's like 7 people who don't come back, and I believe there's 187 left. So well over 200 people were killed. So they go back, and then the second game is, I can't pronounce it. It's like this honeycomb cookie that's made in Korea by street vendors. It's like pressed, and they take a cookie cutter and they put it in the middle, and in real life you're supposed to eat around it, and if you eat around it perfectly, you get like another cookie or something. If any Koreans are watching this and I'm wrong, please comment below and tell me, but that's based on the research that I've done and everything that I've heard, that's what it is. In the Squid Game, they have, it's not very long, it might be 15 minutes to get the shape out completely, or they get shot, okay? If they break it, because the honeycomb is very fragile, if they break the inside, whatever shape they chose, they get shot. At the very beginning, they tell them to choose a shape. Our main character friggin' chooses an umbrella. And there's a lot of foreshadowing of that in the beginning where he talks about umbrellas and he always broke them as a kid and he could never have an umbrella. He chose an umbrella. Obviously, I think the triangle would be the easiest to do, but there's like a group of them and they're all friends, and he chose an umbrella and he figures out a way to do it, okay? Tons more people are killed. It's pretty horrific. I, at that point, was like, I cannot continue to watch the show, but yet I couldn't walk away because the absolute sheer brilliance of it is unbelievable. They do such a good job with the editing and introducing us to each character. There's about 10 main characters who you kind of follow the whole way. Now, some of them are pretty horrible, but we also learn and see why they're all in such dire straits and desperation. Overall, the social commentary on, you know, desperation and what people will do, not just for money, like, oh, everything's great in my life, but if I had all this money, it would be better. But I'm in this super desperate situation. I don't know how to get out of it. So well done. If you can stand the horrors of what happens, you should watch. Let's continue. So in the next episode, well, actually, over that night, they don't feed everybody enough, so people are angry, and people start turning on each other, and it's pretty horrific. Quite a few people get murdered. Then the next day for game 3, it's this tug of war where 10 people and 10 people, you know, they tug of war. First they tell them to pick a group of 10, and they choose a group of 10, they do a tug of war, and it's super high up, like hundreds of feet up, and the people that get pulled across into the abyss will obviously die. Horrific, okay? And it's also, we see our main character look the other guy, when he realizes that they're going to die, looks him in the eyes. You can see it because the acting is so brilliant from this actor, who I'm not familiar with, but apparently was a model, but he's been in a lot of stuff in Korea, and he's absolutely brilliant. We also are getting to know the other characters. We're getting to know their motivations. There is a boy that who he grew up with. When he's outside, we meet his mother. When he's on the outside, so he's not involved in the game, we meet his mother, and his mother's talking about how he's away on a business trip in America and how he's so successful, and she's so proud of him, and she's working at like a little market. In America, it would be sort of like a farmer's market where you go and you set up and then you sell, but she doesn't own her own shop or anything. She like sells fish, and she gives him some fish that he, even though he's starving, he gives to a cat. So we know that we see that he has this really good heart, but we also see that his childhood friend is successful. He went to Seoul College, which apparently is really hard to get into. He graduated with honors. He works in, like, you know, I think he's a stock trader or something. And we see that he feels less than because he's not that guy. So anyhow, they're on the same team together. They sort of form an alliance, and we also learn on the outside there's this a character who saves I don't want to tell you every single thing that happens, but there's a character who saves our main character at the beginning, and he on the outside meets up with this successful businessman, and the successful businessman gives him some money. It makes him immediately likable, but throughout the show his desperation grows and he becomes very unlikable. Episode 6 is it's so hard to watch. There's a game that they're told to go into pairs, okay, to choose pairs, and basically based on the previous game, they are choosing based on who they think is going to be the strongest or the smartest, so they're going to work as a team. Well, that's not the case. They're pitted against each other. Episode 6, in my mind, in craft would be, you know, in storytelling, you go up, right? So you go all the way up to your crisis, and then the characters get pushed down into their all's lost, and then they go back up higher than the crisis, and then the resolve. And the higher than the crisis is the climax. It's like where everything comes to a head. This is episode 6 is the crisis point for this show. Us as the audience have our all is lost. I honestly told my husband I can't watch this anymore. I was sobbing uncontrollably. It was so hard to stomach this game. And meanwhile, there's all this other stuff that's going on with the person who's running the game. And there's also a cop whose brother is missing, and he has snuck onto and taken the place of one of these guys dressed all in red who doesn't have a face, who's doing all the killing. So you're rooting for him because you want it to stop, of course. And at this point, we've lost characters who we really like. And we're also seeing the effect, we're witnessing and we're experiencing the effect of what's happening on our main characters. It is beyond. It's beyond anything that I can imagine. When people ask me about it, I say that it's like Battle Royale or Hunger Games on steroids. It's so much worse than those, but it's so well done. I mean, there's a reason that all of the entire world is watching this, and it's like the #1, or it's about to be the #1 show ever viewed on Netflix, because it is so well crafted. And on a craft note, for all my writers out there, the guy who wrote this wrote it like in 2008, and it got rejected like 40 times or something. Someone, if I'm wrong about that number, please correct me in the comments, but it was rejected many, many, many times for many, many years, and he was broke, and then finally, and now it's this huge success. It's hard. Our characters fall into their all is lost moment. They know that they're gonna die. They can't walk away from it. The husband of the husband and wife team, spoiler alert, she obviously dies. He's begging everybody to stop, and the businessman guy, the successful guy who's friends with our main character, tells him, like, it's not going to bring your wife back, we might as well see it through. But they are still under the impression that they can get out of there together, which it's so shocking to me, because at this point it's so clear to me what's going to happen, okay? There's a 5th game, and then finally there's 3 people in the end, and only 2 survive the night to go on to the final game, which is Squid Game. Massive spoiler here. It is that businessman, the successful businessman, who, as it turns out, has been embezzling money, so he's wanted by the cops, and I believe he's also wanted by people who he owes money to, against our hero, who is poor, has made bad choices in life, and also has a gambling problem, and is very likable. Our main character smiles all the way through this. He always, always, always does the right thing, except in episode 6, and he is pitted against this old man who seemingly has dementia, and he starts lying to him about the marbles so he can win. It's gut-wrenching because you can see that it's destroying him, but also he sort of changed who he is. It's so well done, because it really shows, like, what would you do in that situation? I would have voted to leave immediately. I don't think I would go to something like that, but it's hard to say unless you're in that situation. Would I do something like that if I thought it could save a parent or a loved one? I mean, that's really where he's at when he goes back into the game. So he's pitted against that main character. I figured it out pretty early on that he was going to be the one who our main character was going to be pitted against at the end, because of the juxtaposition in storytelling of the character who's supposedly perfect. And also, this show is really about society and rich and poor, and it's a commentary on how much importance we as a society put on money, and that money is important, and you're not successful unless you're making all this money and you have like this prestigious career, which is total BS. Everybody knows that it's BS, but still society tells us that all the time, so it's drilled into our heads. So in our main character's mind, that guy's more successful, he's a loser, and his friend from grade school is super successful, when in reality they end up in the same place. They end up in the exact same place. They end up in the same place as all these other people that are desperate. They end up in the same place as the character who is has the number 101, who is just a flat-out criminal, bad person. They're in the same place with this poor girl who is a North Korea defector who has come to South Korea for a better life. But both her parents, one of them got killed trying to come to South Korea, and the other one is still in North Korea. And her little brother, she put him into an orphanage because she couldn't afford to feed him. So she starts living a life of pickpocketing. So she's desperate, and they're all in the same place. So at the end of the day, it's telling us that money doesn't matter and status doesn't matter. We can all be reduced down to the same thing. Another super chilling factor, which is sort of a commentary on all of us to the super, super rich, that 1% that people perceive or like to perceive as being villains, even if they're not all villains. Not everybody who's super, super rich is, but there are many who are. And like the Hunger Games, these super, super rich people put this game together as means of entertainment. They're watching people literally fight to the death, like back in the gladiator days in the old Roman times when you put the poor people together and they fight to the death until there's one survivor. It's horrific. I do like to note that they're not all American, but a lot of the episodes called like VIPs, and the VIPs they're like these American rich businessmen. I would love to talk to the director and ask him why he chose to make the Americans like these horrible people, but that's not probably too hard to figure out the way that the world sees us with a lot of the things that we've done politically. This is not a political episode. Story-wise, you have, I'll go over the story points. I know this is super long today, but it's so unbelievably well done that if you are all interested in story or filmmaking, especially if you're a filmmaker and you want to be a director or photography or anything, it's good to watch, but I'm telling you, it's disturbing. It's disturbing on so many levels, so be prepared. If you're like me, I cannot get on a horse to this day because I watched Gone with the Wind when I was 5 years old. And in my head, that scene when Bonnie gets thrown off that horse is so much more horrific than it actually is. In my mind, she launches off the horse and all this stuff happens. In reality, because of filming what it was back then, she just kind of falls off the horse. But in my head, it's so much worse, and I'm terrified of horses. My mom never should have showed me that. They explained to us about fire. They didn't explain to us about dying on horses. So I'm very impressionable, but it's terrifying. It's so well done, though. The story beats, I'll tell you, that work. Let's just go from the main character. We meet him. They show us who he is as a character. They show us that he's broke, but they also show that he's a fairly happy guy, despite the fact that he's broke. He has a severe gambling problem. That's how he ends up in this situation, okay? He goes back basically to save his mother, and because his daughter is moving to America. So he has reasons for why he goes back. He's in the situation. They introduce even the game to us. Then they're sort of released. And then there is the quarter mark where the story really starts and everybody makes the choice to go back into the story. And it just keeps rising, 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 rising. And every episode, they're making choices. Do we go forward? I mean, at any time, they could also just stop playing and die, which is a horrible thing. But if you're killing somebody else so you can live, that's something that's horrible too. And at the very, very end, after, it goes all the way up, episode 6, it's emotionally terrifying. It's horrific in every way. Everybody's devastated that has survived. All these people have been killed. Our businessman literally screws over his friend, a guy who looks up to him and idolizes him and would do anything for him. He screws him over so he can live. It's one of the great tragedies of life. I think a lot of people would step over somebody else's dead body in that situation. I hate to think about what would happen if I was in that situation. I hope that I would do the right thing, but there's no possible way of knowing, and I hope I never have to make that decision. So much of it is great. We see their all is lost where, should we leave now or do we stay because all these deaths have been in vain? And we learn about the human condition, and we learn about, how desperation can change somebody. And I'll tell you this, that guy, the businessman who pretty quickly loses his soul and starts doing some pretty horrible things. At the very, very end, he does the right thing. He makes the right decision. And our main character is so devastated. He wins all the money. He goes back. His mom has now since died while he was there for the 6 days playing the game. He goes back to his life and soul, and he can't function. The guilt is destroying him. We see the effects of that a year later and how he's living and how he's dealing with things. And there is a pretty big spoiler that I'm not going to tell you. I did figure it out. My husband thought I was crazy. He was like, that's just not going to happen. But it really was that, because I thought, I know so much about storytelling and symbolism and stuff that they didn't show something, and that's how I knew what I knew. And I shared it with a couple friends, and they're like, you're crazy, but it turns out that I was right. Just because I know storytelling, that's all. But I guess I'm going to say, if you're on the fence, should you watch Squid Game? Well, you've watched this whole thing, so you know a lot of what happens. But I do think it's worth a watch for storytelling and craft purposes, no matter what you're writing, because they do it really, really well. Do I wish that I hadn't seen it? Absolutely. If I could go back to Saturday or Sunday Sunday of this week, which was the 2nd of October, I would make the decision not to watch it, because it's messing with my head. I can't stop thinking about it. I was reading a romance, like a holiday romance, a few hours ago, and I was still thinking about that main character. And the music that they used was haunting me. I actually heard one of the songs on the radio, on a classical radio station this morning, and it just gave me chills. That's me. I'm very impressionable. But I hope you liked my review of it. I definitely give it an A+. It's horrifying and devastating, and it's a psychological mind. You know, it's everything that you want this kind of thing to be. I wish I'd never seen it, but since I did, I definitely give it an A for being just well crafted. The story's well told. There's foreshadowing, there's visual things. Everything about it is just super well done. But I wish I hadn't seen it, because it's also very, very, very disturbing. Next time I come back, I will talk about something happier. I think I'll probably do something about writing holiday romances or something. But have an amazing rest of your week. Thank you for watching.